Residential work tends to be incredibly intimate in a way the commercial work just isn't. Nobody's taking off their shoes and feeling what the tile feels like underfoot in a commercial project.
I can't imagine a client who would be able to answer just in a single sort of program document initially what they wanted.
And I often feel like our first passes at design are sort of at about this level of quality, and that there's actually an improvement that happens with client input.
We will say to both parties, if it's a couple, do you want to share a closet? And then the other one will say, oh, no, I really don't want to, for instance. And that's, the first time in 20 years of knowing each other, they've actually had that conversation because they've just been living with what they had.
I often think there's an aha moment that comes during the design process where we feel like a client has kind of opened their eyes to this thing that previously was something only we could see and they were having trouble seeing, and suddenly they're seeing it through our eyes and understanding why these things are so important. And they certainly felt it when they walked into the space, but they couldn't have put their fingers on what those things were. I think we're drawn to a really crisp, minimalist detail.
And the sort of juxtaposition of old with new.
We have great fondness for old buildings, so the work more often than not becomes a kind of contrast between those two opposing poles, and we often think that there's a kind of excitement because of that contrast.
The client expects, if any vendor does anything wrong, it's ultimately on you. Are you bringing in vendors?
We insist on it, in fact. It's right there in our contract documents that we be that connector.
Person and that connector.
It is a lot of responsibility, but it's the only way the process really works.
One's first impression is always good because you get the sales pitch initially when you talk to a vendor, but then for us it's the follow-through and whether or not that initial feeling stays all the way through. I mean, you want to work with folks, again, who are very good communicators and actually do what they've presented that they can do.
I feel like communication becomes so much more than we were ever taught in school. But if we can find a vendor who's actually problem solving with us, then they're your collaborator and they're helping you to make this design as good as you can be. And when we end up finding people like that, we end up going back to them again and again.
A lot of the earlier systems, or what we were seeing, was that people were being forced into a situation where they were sort of getting the whole package and having way too much stuff for what they really wanted.
That's what we really liked about your sales pitch, actually, is the focus on things that had always been a problem for us.
Like the not having a lot of stuff on the wall, but still having all that stuff working for you. Going through a thorough design process before you're building is usually the most productive. We're
good friends with lots of architects who don't believe in doing all that detail work up front, but we're actually big believers in all that legwork in the beginning. There's a kind of goal of a perfectly smooth design and construction process, and I'd really like it to be just a straight shot all the way through.
It's a successful project if at the end of it everybody feels like, this is how it was supposed to be. It just makes sense. It should just be so clearly thought out that it seems like it should have always been that way.